Hello, everyone. How are we doing? Are you aware of what week it is? It's the week of the 2025 U.S. Track and Field Championships, which, from the throws perspective, which of course is all this channel cares about, oh man, it's gonna be insane. Um, so today's Tuesday. Audrey and I are driving up tomorrow. Coverage with the CITIUS team all week. Meet starts Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's genuinely gonna be insane. We know what the Jav situation is, but those are still gonna be fun competitions. But for every other one, with spots on the line and just absolutely no idea what's gonna happen, there's a million different ways each event could play out, and I'm so unbelievably excited. It's gonna be so much fun. The CITIUS team is gonna be doing a ton of stuff all week. We're gonna have morning shows, we're gonna have post-meet shows, which I will be on, so I will ensure that you guys will hear about the throws on the CITIUS shows. Hi, Audrey. She's taking a video of me right now. And yeah, so stay tuned to CITIUS for all that. I'm gonna try and do a recap every day. Not Friday, because there are no throws on Friday, I believe. But Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, stay tuned for those if I can manage to make those happen. And then we'll do a big recap at the end of the week. But yeah, it's gonna be busy. I'm gonna be in the mix zone, so stay tuned to the CITIUS YouTube channel and of course Paulie Throws, Instagram, P. Hoff Mahoney on Twitter for all the live coverage from USA's. It's gonna be a crazy weekend. I can't wait. This is the biggest meet I've ever been to, and it's gonna be legendary. And when I tell you the lineups we've got for every event, it's straight bangers up and down the line. So let's get started and let's get into talking about these. So we're gonna start with men's shot, where, as we touched on in the last episode of This Week in Throws, Ryan Krauser officially out of this one, but that doesn't matter because USATF updated their guidelines, and with him having the bye as world champion, he can still go to Tokyo even if he doesn't compete this weekend. So that's very good to see. The men's shot is going to be Saturday afternoon, starts at 4:40 Eastern, 1:40 Pacific. Even without Ryan there, so Ryan's got a spot locked up, and then there's a bunch of guys fighting for 3 more spots, and it's going to be a slugfest. You got Joe Kovacs coming in as the world leader, national leader as well, obviously. 22:48 with his mark from pre. And it, like, Joe's season started out not super spectacular over in Europe, where he opened like under 20 or under 21 in Hala, put together a couple good marks. I think his season's best coming into pre was 21:52. I want to say from the Rome Diamond League. And then obviously he just smashes one at pre. And at this point, I think everybody and their mother has seen the video of his warm-up from pre that apparently was like 23:70 or something, which, I mean, huge Joe Kovacs warm-ups are just a part of life. But Joe, like, obviously he's fit. He proved that at pre. He took down basically everyone that would have a chance of robbing him of his 9th, I believe, number 9. I'm looking at my CITIUS preview off screen right now. That'll be going up tomorrow. So stay tuned to the CITIUS Mag newsletter, as well as CITIUSMag.com for all those breakouts. But yeah, it's his 9th straight national team this year, going all the way back to Beijing 2015. I forget if he was at Worlds in 2013. 15, 16, 17, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay, so he wasn't in 2013, I guess. But yeah, so Joe's going for national team number 9. He's medaled at every single one of those championships he's been at, which I mean, Joe Kovacs, like, Ryan Krauser is the GOAT, obviously, but Joe Kovacs is just absurd and deserves more love than he gets. He's so good. And I mean, this year, like, it's very different seasons for him comparing 2022 to 2023 or 2024 to 2025. What am I talking about? Where 2024, obviously he comes out and goes 23-13 at pre 22-93 at LA, or maybe those were flipped around. And then still managed to medal in Paris, but couldn't beat Ryan at trials. And then by the end of the year was really starting to kind of like peter out towards the end. And it seems, early return seems like he's flipped that around. So I'm excited. I'm very excited for what Joe's going to be able to do this week. It's kind of similar, I believe, to the progression he had in 2023, where I'm pretty sure he started that season off very mid by his standards, but then ended up, throwing, I think that was the year he threw 23 to close it out. And no, that might have been 2022. He threw something nasty at pre to beat Ryan that year, at the end of the year. Then obviously he took bronze at Worlds. So Joe Kovacs is just going to be there no matter what. And seeing him at the level we saw him at pre, he hasn't competed since then, so he's had now a month to build off of that. I don't see anyone beating Joe Kovacs. I'm not making picks because I don't want to trap myself by doing that. But I don't see anyone beating Joe Kovacs this weekend. Now it gets interesting because if Joe has a spot and Ryan has a spot, there's 2 more slots on that national team where you look at 3 guys that razor thin margins between them this year. And of course, I'm talking about Peyton Otterdahl, Roger Steen, and Trip Pippery. Let's start with Peyton, because, he made the Olympic team last year, finished 4th, and just heartbreaking, like misses bronze, because Joe snipes him to take silver in round 6. But for Peyton, this year, I think he's progressing more reasonably this year, perhaps, than he was last year. Because last year he came out hammering throws at the beginning of the season. It was just going like 22 mid, 22 mid. He threw, I think, his PB of 22.59 at Drake Relays. He'd also thrown like 22.40, I want to say. And this year, he kind of followed the rest of the world. Slower start to the year. Breaks 22 for the first time at, where was it? Ironwood. And then, he's been producing really solid marks. I said back in like May that I thought he was the favorite for gold in Tokyo. Obviously, I think Joe's kind of overtaken that mantle now. But for Peyton, like, it's still been a really good season, even if it hasn't been as like jaw-dropping as what we saw from him last year. But I have a lot of faith in him. And so, like, obviously, Trip and Roger have had the seasons of their lives, and they've been throwing so well every time out. But I just have that little bit more trust in Peyton, especially because Peyton, I believe, also hasn't competed since pre. So he's now gotten back in the lab. And, like, he finished 6th at pre, behind Joe, Roger, and Trip, as well as Rajendra and Chuck Enekwechi. And I trust Peyton to figure out enough of his throw and be in good enough shape to finish top 3, I guess, with Ryan not there. Because, like, when you think about it, what was I even going to say? I had a point there. Oh, yeah. When you think about it, like, his ceiling is so much higher than Rogers or Tripp's are. And so if he can just approach that ceiling, like, it should be no contest unless if Roger and Tripp just elevate to another level, which they have done this year. Like, it started with their epic battle at US Indoors where Tripp came out on top. Then obviously they go toe-to-toe and take silver for Roger, bronze for Tripp at World Indoors. You see him again at the first WSPS where they both threw 73 feet or whatever, which is like 22:30, which is just crazy. And then, I mean, they both PB'd this year. For Roger, a little bit more of a marginal PB, going from 22:08, I believe, which he threw last year, now to 22:11 at pre. Whereas for Tripp, he PB'd for the first time since 2021 in June when he threw 21:96 and then broke 22 for the first time at pre, going 22:09, I believe. And I think I'm liking Tripp more than Roger right now, because Tripp has put together his last 3 competitions: 21:96, 22:09, 21:88, which was at Ed Murphy in round 6 to take the win there, beat Roger, and just Tripp, like, I mean, he already has a national team berth outdoors because he was in Eugene in 2022, and it just feels like it's building somewhat of, like, a sense of inevitability, I guess, is, a way you could describe it, which I guess is the way I'm choosing to describe it, um, where he's been so good this year, and, like, he's taken it to that next level, which we've been waiting on for him, ever since he finished competing collegiately at Texas. We've been waiting to see this kind of the next evolution of Tripp Pippery, and we've seen that this year. And, you know, he's back in the ring. He threw 22 for the first time. I think it's gonna be super tough for Roger to hold him off. And, like, no disrespect to Roger, like, I love the guy. You know, I mean, he has a better PB and he has a better season's best than Tripp. He beat him head to head at pre, beat him at World Indoors. So maybe I'm discounting that a little bit too much. But it's just when you compare, like, recent form and just what Tripp has done his last 3 meets, like, it would take one of Roger's best days ever, I think, to beat Tripp. Whereas for Tripp, I think it could take just something that has become kind of normal for him this summer to beat Roger. Um, I'm just I'm working my way into just making picks, which is gonna end poorly. But I guess I essentially just said my picks for the US team are obviously Ryan and then Joe, Peyton, and Tripp. Whatever. But don't think the conversation is just limited to those 4 guys at USA's, because the guys that are a little bit down the top list this year, like, one of them is Josh Awatunde, and obviously we haven't seen him, in 22-meter form in 2 years now, which is probably what it's gonna take to make this team, but he threw a season's best last year at trials, finished 5th. He's coming off of a season's best of 21:43, which I believe was at Ed Murphy where he threw that. And I mean, this is a guy with 2 US national team appearances, a world bronze medal from 2022. Um, and I didn't really realize how old Josh was. Like, he's already 30, which is kind of crazy to me. But, like, don't sleep on Josh Awatunde because all it takes is one, or I guess it would take 2 of those guys ahead of him to slip up a little bit. And, like, we've seen Josh elevate when it counts in the past. And so, like, there's definitely a path for Josh Awatunde to get on his first US team since 2023, which I guess isn't that long of a time. He just missed one. Um, but yeah, there's certainly a way forward there, I think, for Josh. You've also got Jason Swarns in the mix, the NCAA champion from Wisconsin, who threw 21:37 in early May. And then, what did he win NCAAs at? 21:23, I think, in this same ring in Eugene. In 6th round fashion, throwing one of the best marks of his career on the final throw of the competition. So, like, Jason's a guy where I mean, he was a finalist at trials last year, I think. I believe he finished inside the top 8, so he can compete well on this national stage. He's leveled up this year, PB'd by almost a meter. Um, and so, like, don't overlook Jason Swarns, I'd say, because he can deliver when there's pressure on him, as we saw in Hayward about a month and a half ago. And obviously, it's a much taller task to make a US team than it is to win an NCAA title, but, like, he can deliver in those types of moments, so don't I wouldn't be that's a lie. I'd be very surprised if it somehow worked out that, Jason made the team because it would take a lot of guys having bad days and him having the best day of his life, but it's not completely out of the picture. I do think it's interesting. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to hammer, but Tarek's not doing shot this week. He's going all in on hammer, which is fascinating. I'm curious just, like, if it's, like, just because he's kind of frustrated with the shot right now after finishing 3rd at NCAAs and, like, at indoor nationals, he was talking about, like, "I need to be throwing 70 feet by now," which I think 70 feet is, like, 21:34 or something. He's like, "It's embarrassing that I'm not," and then he didn't manage to do that this outdoor season. I forget if he even broke 21 outdoors this year. Um but I just wonder if there's, like, some level of frustration there, and he's kind of aware of the fact that hammer is probably his better shot. Um, I don't know. It's just something that is interesting. Hopefully, I'll get to ask him about in the mix zone. But yeah, Tarek's not doing shot, so that is kind of interesting. One less guy who could be. I mean, just knowing the way that Tarek can elevate his game, like, I think he obviously would have had a shot. He was 8th at trials last year. You've also got Jordan Geist in the mix, who is doing the shot and hammer double. And he was 4th at trials last year, and then right after that threw a PB of 22:25, which is better than Roger and Tripp's PB. I think it's better than Josh's PB. Josh might have thrown 22:30 back in 2022. I'm kind of blanking on that right now, but, like, that's a crazy far mark. But this summer hasn't necessarily gone Jordan's way. He's been in the, like, high 20s, very low 21s a lot when he has thrown shot this summer. And so, like, his better odds are to make the hammer team, but I mean, even if he's not necessarily in that kind of form, like, when you have a guy who can throw 22:25 and has shown the capability to perform really well on this stage, like, that's never someone you can count out. So, I've done 15 minutes on men's shot. This video is going to be ridiculous. Um, but yeah, like, just Jordan Geist, even though he might not have had the sexiest of seasons so far in the shot, like, he's very clearly a guy you can't just be forgetting about. Um, and yeah, like, men's shot is it's gonna be insane. There's a chance we could see, even without Ryan Krauser there, top 8 take, like, 21:20 maybe? That's probably a bit optimistic. Maybe top 7, because without Ryan or Tarek there, it might be hard to go that deep. Um, but yeah, this shot competition is gonna be ridiculous, and essentially, it's gonna be 4 guys fighting for 3 spots when you look at Joe, Peyton, Tripp, and Roger. But like I said, there's a lot of dark horses towards the bottom of that list that could very well be mixing things up. Women's shot is, obviously the favorite is a lot more clear, and it doesn't really matter if she was a clear favorite or not because Chase Jackson has the bye, from winning Worlds in 2023. The one thing I'm kind of interested about for Chase is 2023 USAs, where she had the bye coming out of Worlds in 2022. She threw like 1860 and finished 4th. Obviously, she's in much better shape this year than she was this year. Than she was that year, I should say. And she's been throwing a lot better. But it's just I assume, considering she's also like chasing 21 so hard right now, like she's not gonna just take this meet off, essentially. Like, I don't know if that's what she did in 2023, but it kind of seems like maybe she just wasn't caring that much about it. Um, but like she really likes this ring. Obviously, she's thrown 2094 and 2076 here. And it's like there's zero pressure on her this competition because I mean, she's probably gonna win anyway, and she also has a guaranteed spot at Worlds, so she can just go out there and let it rip, and I'm super excited, to watch that play out. Women's shot, for the record, is going to be, come on, scroll up for me. Da, da, da. Why is my mouse not working? Hello? Thank you. The 2nd, August 2nd, so that's Saturday at 3:45 Eastern, 12:45 Pacific time. So Chase, cut and dry favorite. Um, Obviously she's just simply ridiculous. The things she's done this year break the brain, and I can't wait to see what she'll. So this is a stat on just how dominant Chase is. There's been 13 performances by American women this year over 20 meters. Chase Jackson has 12 of them. And then there's been 23 individual 20-meter throws by Americans this year. And Chase Jackson has 21 of them. So, yeah, I think you can say she's a favorite. The woman who has the other one 20-meter performance and two other, almost spilled my water bottle there, and 2 other 20-meter throws is one Miss Jada Ross of the University of Oregon, formerly, throwing at her home, in her home ring once again. And Jada's looking good. I was slightly skeptical, obviously, with the start to her indoor season, where closing out her NCAA eligibility, she didn't win the national title. She threw 1898 at nationals, but failed to break 19 meters on the season. And I was like, was last year a fluke? And I was kind of skeptical. And then the start to her pro career wasn't insane, where she was like, she's throwing like 1820 or something at the Diamond Leagues in China. She's proved me wrong. That's safe to say. She's bounced back. 1962, I believe it was at Ironwood, and then 2013 at Pre. Monaco, the week after Pre, didn't go that well, but I already talked a little bit about how I'm not really blaming people for throwing bad at that meet, more so just praising people like the Netherlands' Jessica Schilder for winning that one. So Jada, I'm super confident in her for this one, to finish at least top 4, thanks to Chase having the bye. Like, she's just really, really good again, and it wasn't a fluke, and I feel stupid forever even having that thought creep into my mind. But yeah, Jada's just the fact that it's not just one meet where she's shown she's back in that form. It was Ironwood was good. She built on it at Pre, and now she's back at USA's again. I'm excited to see what Jada's going to be able to manage. I'm also excited for Maggie Ewen to get back on the US team, which I think is like, it feels like almost a certainty this year. I mean, she's had, let's see, what's my stat here? 6 competitions over 1950. And there's only 4 Americans this year who have thrown over 1950, and it's Chase, Maggie, Jada, and Maya Lesnar, who we'll get to in a little bit. So Maggie's been consistent, throwing 19 high, 19 mid, just over and over and over again. Her season's best is 1993. I believe she threw 1973 at Pre. She's back to looking like Maggie Ewen. And obviously, like, her 2045 from 2023 at LA is a little bit of an outlier at this point. Um, but if you, like, take that one out, um, or even if you don't, what am I talking about? Even if you don't take that one out, like, still the season Maggie's put together this year, it's just so exciting to see after, like, the way last year went where she's coming off the broken foot, which I believe happened in February. Um, and she just didn't look like herself, and you're like, "Damn, that sucks." Like, will we see Maggie Ewen back at that level again? She's she's back at that level again. It's super exciting to see. Um, and with Maggie, Jada, and Chase, they seem like a pretty cut and dry top 3, but for that 4th spot, that might be one of the, like, battling for one spot in particular, that might be one of the best of the entire meet. So, Raven Saunders is not competing at this one. They haven't competed all year. I don't know what's going on with them, but I was kinda sad to see that. But I tell you who wasn't sad to see that is every American shot putter not named Chase Jackson, Jada Ross, or Maggie Ewen, because that's an Olympic finalist that they don't have to deal with fighting for that 4th spot on the US national team. Olympic finalist last year, obviously, they won Olympic silver in Tokyo. Abby Moore, her just ascendant season where every competition she's had has been better than her PB coming into this year through 19 meters at Ed Murphy. Um, She's done everything you could hope she would this year to get her way onto her first national team. It's just a matter of if she can continue that under the bright lights and keep throwing really well. You also got Abria Smith in there who Abria, like, I'm biased because I've interviewed her twice and she's awesome, but what the heck has happened this year? Like, she was at Hampton last year, never broken 16 meters in her life. And now she's thrown 1892, 1885, and 1875, I believe. So Coach JC Lambert, you're a wizard. And for Bria, like, I mean, she threw 1885 at USA's in this ring. Like, she didn't just fold on the biggest stage she's been on this year. I believe she threw 1875 at Ed Murphy, which was her first, like, pro meet. Um, so she's, even when it's not just the collegiate invitational section or whatever at Tom Jones, like, she still can throw really far, and now she's coming into this one. Given the fact that she had never thrown 16 before this year, I'm just gonna assume this is her first USA championship. Luckily, she's got a really good mentor coming into this one in Deanna Price. Like, you can't get much more experience on this stage than training and lifting and working with Deanna Price every day. Um, but yeah, I'm super excited to see how Abria is going to compete this week because it's gonna be a bloodbath for that 4th spot. You've got Abby, you've got Abria, you've got Coco Odeluga of Ole Miss, who had not a great day at NCAAs, but, like, the body of work she put together earlier on the season, going 1893, I believe, very early, and then 1886, 1860. Like, she's marks wise, like, just as good as Abria. But Abria has, it seems like she was also at Ed Murphy, and Abria beat her pretty handily there, as did Abby Moore. So I mean, obviously, Coco's younger than Abria is, but Abria's proven to be able to handle, I guess, higher pressure situations better, you could say. Um, but certainly, like, all it takes is one. Like, we've seen that time and time again, that at these meets, it's one throw to get you into the top 3 or top 4 in this situation, most likely. So, we don't know who that's gonna come from. It could be, I mean, one person who, like, if you look at, Coco, like, maybe it's just one little thing wasn't lining up for her at NCAAs. She finds that cue, she makes that mark happen, and then she's on a flight to Tokyo. That's just how thin the margins can be in this sport, especially when you're coming down to like this 4th spot in the US team where there's not really a clear favorite by any means. Um, so I'm definitely excited for that. And then you also got the Jessicas, Woodard and Ramsey, who have both had really strong seasons and absolutely are going to be in the mix for that 4th spot. I believe Jessica Ramsey finished 3rd at US Indoors, so she already has a national team berth from this year. And yeah, that's kind of all of the preview for the women's shot. Is the top 3 seems pretty cut and dry. And then it's just a tooth and nail. Oh, Maya Lesnar. I'm sorry, Maya. Miss 1960 NCAA outdoor champion. I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about Brock Lesnar's daughter. He probably would have killed me. No, Maya has. I'm slightly hesitant about Maya because obviously she threw 1960 at like Mountain West champs or something, which is the 4th best mark by an American this year. But then she won NCAAs pretty handily, throwing 19 meters. That's a good mark. And then maybe I'm putting too much stock in her pro debut, which was throwing like 18-20 and finishing 10th slash DFL at pre. I don't believe she's competed since then. Maybe I'm leaning too far into that and making it a bigger deal than it is. It's just something that, especially when you look at like Abria and the way she's continued her form, she continued her form at Ed Murphy. Obviously, Ed Murphy is a bit of a smaller stage than the pre-classic, and like maybe they're just at different like cycles in their training or whatever. And there's obviously a lot more factors that can go into that. So maybe I'm looking too far into that. But if you're like the thing I said about Peyton, where like his ceiling is just so much better than Rogers and Tripp's. I mean, Maya's ceiling is so much better than anyone else that's going to be in contention for that 4th spot. And so she can have, I think pre was a pretty bad day for her. She can have an okay day and still manage to make the team. Gosh, I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about Maya Lesnar. But yeah, so overall for a women's shot, it's like the men is 4 men fighting for those 3 spots on the national team, it feels like. The women's is the top 3 feels pretty clear, and then it's like 6 women fighting for that last spot, which is, I don't know which one's more interesting to me, actually. It's just kind of, I mean, they're both going to be fascinating. I don't really think it's fair to say one's going to be more fun to watch than the other. But yeah, the thing it comes down to is just American shot putting, men's and women's. It's just an embarrassment of riches. Like, you look at, I believe the US has 14 women that are either in the world rankings quota or have the standard. And then for the men, I think it's like 11 guys that have the standard or in the quota. So there's just so many people that if they were anything other than American, yeah, congratulations, you're going to Tokyo. And instead, we're leaving like 3 full national teams home. It's crazy just how good we are. It's pretty cool. And it makes for some really fun national championship competitions. But yeah, like shot put, it's what we do, baby. And it's gonna be so much fun. I can't wait. Now, 34 minutes into this video, we're finally gonna move to a different event because let's talk about men's discus after I get some water because I'm talking a lot and I'm getting thirsty. Men's discus. Sam Mattis sure seems like he's gonna make national team number 6 in a row. Um, you look at the way he started his season, throwing a PB at the Triton Invitational, then going to Ramona, throwing 70, I think it was like 70.05 on day 1, and then 70.27 for the actual World Invitation, or 71.27, I should say, for the actual World Invitational. Like, Sam's really good, and then he goes over to Europe, and I talked with him after the LA Throws Cup, and, like, he wasn't super happy with the way that his European season went. I think he competed, I think it was, like, maybe, like, the Rabat Diamond League and then a couple other meets in Europe, and he didn't place that well, but I was, like, looking back through, his World Athletics page in previous years, and, like, the marks were, in comparison to where he usually is for these European meets, pretty damn good. So I still have a ton of confidence in Sam, and then obviously he comes back to the US and is the top American at pre ahead of who was there? It was Reggie and Andrew Evans, I think? Um, come on, who was it? I believe it was Sam, Reggie, and Andrew that were there. And he was the top American at pre, and then he throws 66.99? 66.77, I believe is what he threw at the LA Throws Cup. Was the top American there. Like, all signs are pointing towards Sam winning another national title. And he competes well at this meet. He goes big early. Sometimes he hangs on, sometimes he doesn't, but he always hangs on to at least top 3. And yeah, Sam is there's a lot of guys we're about to talk about that could be mixing it up for one of those 3 spots. But Sam is the one I have the most faith in to kind of hold on. I also have a lot of faith in Andrew Evans, maybe slightly less. Where Andrew, like, he made the team in Paris last year. 2023 didn't go that well for him at USA, but he was throwing well coming into that one. And this year, it was a little bit of a later start. Like, last year, he was hitting all the Ramona meets early in, like, April, I think. A little bit of a slower start to the season for him this year, later as well, which makes sense given USA is a month later. Worlds is a month and a half later than the Olympics were last year. So, like, he's got time. And he's been building his season well. He hasn't left the country yet, I don't believe. But, like, he just threw 66.99 in Ramona. He won in Ironwood. He won the Throws Festival in Tucson. Like, when he's been out there, he's been competing really well. And he's just a consistent guy that gets the job done when he needs to. So I really like Andrew's chances at making the team. But when you look back at trials last year, like, I almost forgot how insane it was, because I believe the night of men's discus at trials last year, I believe I was at my cousin's wedding. So I wasn't really paying attention to it. So I can kind of forget just how ridiculous it was. But the top 7 guys threw over 65 meters. I obviously know who finished 3rd, because it was my good buddy Joe Brown, who I was able to interview like a week after trials. But he moved into 3rd in round 6, beat Reggie Jagers by 4 centimeters for that spot to Tokyo. And, like, that just showed you how crazy this competition can be. And I think of those top 7 that were over 65, I believe everyone is back this year except for Brian Williams, who I think finished 7th. Which, stinks to see, because he made the US team for Budapest and Eugene in 2022. So, like, he's obviously really good, but he hasn't competed at all this year. Not quite sure what the story is there. But it just, like, last year showed just how much chaos there can be at these ones. And, like, who knows? Maybe if it's something like that where everyone has really good days again, there is a world where Sam Mattis or Andrew Evans don't finish in the top 3. I don't necessarily think that would happen because it would take everyone to throw like, I think Sam's gonna throw 66-50 at least. I think Andrew's probably gonna throw 66-50 too. I don't see 3 other guys throwing better than that. So that's kinda where I land on that one. But if you wanna say Sam and Andrew are safe bets, then it's a situation kinda like the women's shot put where you look at that 3rd spot and you're like, "Good lord, there's a lot of guys that you can make very good arguments for there." I'm gonna start with Joe Brown because he's the one who took that 3rd spot last year, and Joe's season has been really good. Like, he's been doing a lot of the same stuff, putting up the big marks in Ramona like he was last year. But then he also went out and competed in Germany for a little bit this year for the first time. And at one meet, he threw 66.08, which is, I believe that's his best mark ever outside of Ramona. He threw 65.79, I think, at trials last year. And so Joe's like, he's performing well. His last 2 competitions at the LA Throws Cup and Ed Murphy haven't been ideal. Ed Murphy, I'll give him a pass for because I know that they were literally like flew like overnight basically from LA to Memphis and then competed the next day. So I'll give him a bit of a pass for Ed Murphy. But even like looking at that, I mean, he showed last year, like, who thought he was going to move into 3rd last year? Not really anyone, I think. So even if his back seems to be up against the wall with some not great showings the last 2 competitions, like, he's shown he can fight out of that and he can make things happen on this stage anyway. And maybe I'm biased because I really like Joe and he's a nice person. I've talked to him a bunch. But yeah, I really like in the way Joe's season has looked so far. Obviously, it'd be nicer if he was coming in with a little bit more momentum, especially considering what like Reggie Jagers is doing, where he's coming off the 3rd best mark of his career in Ramona last week, where he threw, I think, 68.50 something. Marcus Gustafson threw 69 relatively recently, and has been putting together some pretty solid marks. So there are some guys that I think are coming in a little hotter, but Joe kind of showed last year he doesn't really care what you do. He's going to figure out a way to be his best self no matter what. And so I wouldn't count against that happening again this year. For Reggie and Marcus, I mean, they've both put together solid seasons. Marcus obviously threw 69 in a row in the last month at that uncertified, who knows if it was actually real meet at TCU back in March. He threw 70-63, which I kind of forgot until I was doing the research for this video and this preview, just how big it was, just like how big that mark was. 70-63 is crazy. But like it doesn't show up on his World Athletics page, but we know it happened. So he's been throwing so well this year. He's put together a couple other really solid marks in Ramona, and he's just showing, like, last year, I remember it was that it was one of the meets in Ramona where him and Joe both got the Olympic standard in the same meet through huge PBs and went like 67, like 25 and 67.50 or something. And there was, like some skepticism about that. Like, oh, these guys just like kind of came out of nowhere and just hammered these marks. Like, what's going to happen after that? And then obviously Joe makes the Olympic team. Marcus was one of those guys over 65 in Eugene last year. And now Marcus has more than backed that up this year. And so I'm excited to see how he'll 'cause, like, last year, compared to what he had done outside of Ramona, he threw so well in Eugene. Um, and this year, he's competed twice outside of Oklahoma or Texas. And one of them was at the LA Throws Cup where I think he was like the 4th American and threw like 63.3. And one of them was another meet in Southern California a couple weeks ago where he threw like 61 maybe. Um, I don't know how much of a red flag that actually is because I understand, like, for throwers without, like, major contracts or whatever, like, travel can obviously be very hard. It's also very hard to, like, get into some of the bigger European meets, so, like, I'm not faulting him for that and not being like, "Oh, he's only competed in Oklahoma and Texas." He's like, I don't know what the point would be there. I'm not, like, faulting him for that. I'm just saying it's something to think about. Maybe, given the way he performed in Eugene last year at trials, maybe I'm not maybe, I probably am making a bigger deal out of that than it actually is. But I guess we'll find out. Marcus, like I said, he's put together a really good season. I'm excited to see how he'll bring it again. And then Reggie Jagers, where's my little paragraph on Reggie Jagers in here? Reggie Jagers, his first couple months of the season weren't great. I think I'd heard he was maybe dealing with some sort of injury, but he's really picked it up with a really good showing of the LA Throws Cup. He actually performed really well off that quick LA to Memphis turnaround at Ed Murphy, and then in Ramona just continues it. And like, if you're looking for momentum coming into USA's, there's not really anyone who has better momentum than Reggie Jagers to make his. I don't think he made the team for Eugene in 2022. So I think he's only made, in terms of US national teams, I think he might have only been to Tokyo, and that's it. But he's looking good and has a really strong chance, I think, of making it to his first US team in a couple years now. And then we got to talk about my guy, Robbie O'Tall. Love this guy. I saw him in Ramona where he threw out of the D flight. He threw 68, like 30 or something, like a 4-meter PB. Absolutely electric moment. And he's just such a nice guy. I interviewed him after, and this is a guy who works 60 hours a week. He works for Deloitte, so I think it's like I think it's like an office job. It's not like 60 like taxing physical hours and then also training and being a 68-meter discus thrower on top of that. But that's just such a huge time commitment. And then he just somehow finds ways to train around that. And I would love to see Robbie find his way onto a team. Um he's thrown really well this year, even away from Ramona. When you look at, he threw like 64 high at Ironwood, 64 at, or 63 high, I think, at the LA Throws Cup. He has the standard from that big performance in Ramona. So if he can manage top 3, he's got a ticket to Tokyo, which it would just be so cool. I think vibes based, I want to see, I mean, the 3 people that I've interviewed in this field, it's a little biased, but I guess I'd say I'd want to see Sam, Joe, and Robbie make the US team. But whether that's actually going to happen or not, we'll see. But I mean, men's disc is there's just, it's lucky. We're lucky that we have so many like true legitimate contenders, and it's going to be so much fun to watch. And I mean, there's a lot of guys that I didn't even get to mention. Like, I believe Dallin Schertz is going to be there, who I think was in that top 6, top 7 at USA's last year. You got Turner Washington, who's going to be there, which I'm excited to see, because when I was first getting into the sport was when Turner was just dominating at Arizona State. Still one of my favorite, like, throws memories is watching him win NCAAs in 2023 and then rip his shirt off and almost get DQ'd, but then he wasn't DQ'd, and it was awesome. Um, so but he's competed once this year. He's only competed at, a meet in Tucson where he threw, like, 61-1, but he was, I think, 5th at trials last year, qualified off the strength of his, like, 65 something there, and given if he wants to make the team for Worlds, he'd either, like, need the standard either the one thing that I really do like about this year that I think not a lot of people are necessarily talking about is the fact that there is such a big window for chasing the standard or chasing qualifying points after Worlds or after like national championships because last year it was like trials ended the 30th and then the 31st was the end of the qualifying window for Paris or something like that. This year, trial or US champs are ending the August 3rd and the window doesn't close until August 24th. So even if Turner can't get the standard here, but he does finish top 3, like just go out to Ramona and compete 3 more times to get enough world rankings points or something. It'd be really fun to see Turner make his way onto the US team. I don't know how likely that is because it would like just getting qualified would take some work and finishing top 3 in a field like this when you've only competed once this year is a really tall task. But yeah, Turner's definitely in that mix there. Mitchell Weber, formerly of Missouri, is the, I think, 7th best American this year. He threw 65 something in Ramona recently. So he's in really good shape. And there's so many guys. And you could take a straw poll of like 100 people at USA's, and everyone could give you a different top 3 in a different order. And I mean, one of them would be right. Like, that's just how insane this event is, where even for, like, women's shot, there's, like, the clear top 3. Men's shot, it feels like there's 4 guys for 3 spots. Men's disc, it's so open. There's, like, 8 guys fighting for 3 spots. And, like, maybe you say Sam and Andrew are favorites, but it's really a toss-up, as much of a toss-up as you can get for that one. So, men's disc is gonna be a lot of fun. Women's disc, it's also gonna be a lot of fun. Surprise, surprise, because Lockie's got the bye, which is really good. I'm excited that she'll be able to come into this one stress-free. And, like, regardless of the bye, she's been the 2nd best American all year, throwing, obviously, 70-72 in Ramona, 66-59, I think, at Ironwood. My phone's starting to die. That's a problem. I need to speed these last couple events up because I've done 3 events in 53 minutes. Oh my god. I'm so cooked. For Loggy, like, yeah, she's been super consistent all year, which is so important to see after what happened last year. Like, it's not just that the marks are there, it's that she's been able to produce those marks multiple times. 66 at Ironwood. She had 64 at one of the Chinese beats, 64 at pre. So I think she has the bye. But like I said last week, my hope and honestly kind of my expectation at this point is that she won't necessarily need the bye because I think she'll finish top 3 on her own merits. But it's the Val Allman show. She needs to finish top 3, which I don't know, might be a problem. I don't know if a woman who's won 6 straight national titles and 26 straight meets, I don't know if she can finish top 3. But we'll see, I guess. Maybe it's only 5 straight titles. Let me check. No, it is 6. I'm wrong. The last time she didn't win USA's was 2017, where she was redshirting her senior year at Stanford, and she finished 3rd at USA's. That was so crazy. Um, if I need to start saving time because my phone's about to die, I'm not gonna spend that much time talking about how good Val is because I do that every week, and you guys know how good she is by now. So Val and Loggy basically have their spots locked up. Loggy's got the bye, Val is Val. That's that. 2 more spots for a lot of women. Veronica Fraley has the only woman who has been on the team with Val in Eugene, Budapest, and Paris. This year has gone 68-72 or something, PB opener, and then drops off a cliff, and she didn't break 61 for her next 4 meets. And then she's picked it back up, going like 60, a shade under 65, I think, at Ironwood, and then 63 high, shade under 64 at the LA Throws Cup. And I talked to her a little bit after, and like Veronica's very confident about the way she's peaking, the way she's building her season. And I'm not going to argue with someone who's made the last 3 US teams. That's just not something I'm going to do. So, Veronica, I agree with you. You've been building your season really well, and I'm fully expecting a really good shoot. I dropped my mouse. I'm fully expecting a really good peak for you this week as well. And if she's just got to finish top 4 theoretically, I think she can manage that. Then you also got Jaden Ulrich, who's made the Olympic team last year, and like 3 months ago seemed like this was an absolute lock. She opened at 66, through 69-39 in Ramona out of the B flight, through 64 high at regionals, but then barely broke 60 and finished 7th at NCAAs, through like 62 something and finished last at pre. And just, it's crazy how quickly that switch has flipped. And maybe if you think about like pressure, and that's something you put some stock in, then maybe it's a really good thing for her, because coming into NCAAs, she had all the pressure in the world on her. And that's something that I talked about. I was talking about it with Coach Werski, the UF throws coach, who also coaches Loggy now. I was talking with him about that in referring to Alita Van Dalen leading at NCAAs, where like last year at regionals, she went super big, had the pressure on her coming into NCAAs, and then couldn't match that. And so maybe that kind of Jaden got caught up in that at NCAAs. And now maybe with these 2 performances, it's enough of a like reset for her that she can just come into USAs. Like she was runner up at trials last year. Like she beat Veronica. She beat everyone else that was in the field. So maybe this is kind of what she needed in a way. And she'll kind of like flip that switch now and be like, all right, I'm Jaden Ulrich. Remember who I am. I'm going to throw really well and make another US team. Curious to see how she will respond to some adversity in the last couple competitions. Gabby Jacobs, her breakout this year has been ridiculous. She took 2022 and 2023, took it off from the sport, comes back last year in like a good season where she threw a PB of like 63 something in Ramona, I think, but certainly no signs that she'd throw 68-21, I think is what she threw in Kansas back in April. And then just she's been putting together excellent results. 65 mid at Ironwood. She finished 2nd at Ed Murphy. She's got the standard, and like I'm very excited to see how she now will compete on the US stage, where I feel like to most people she's still, given the fact that like the profile of Loggy and Val as global champions, and then with Jaden and Veronica having made the Olympic team this year, even with how good Gabby's been this year, I feel like she's still flying a little under the radar in terms of like the broader public. So I hope she comes out like with a little bit of a fire in her gut and is like, I need to show these people that what I've been doing this year can't just be going unnoticed. So I'm excited to see what Gabby Jacobs will do this week. Someone I'm really excited about. Very like it's hard to say like low key, because like she was 4th at trials last year, but Grand Valley State's Erica Beistel, just the D2 curse of just people not respecting her or realizing quite how good she is. She's been over 65 meters on 4 occasions this year, and 0 of those have come in Ramona, Oklahoma. In fact, she went to Ramona and threw really bad. I think she no-marked in Ramona. Granted, I think 3 of her 65-meter competitions came at Grand Valley in Michigan. I don't know what necessarily the kind of setup is there. I don't know if that's just a place conducive to throwing really far. That might be where Alex Rose threw 71 last year, so maybe it is. But regardless of that, my laptop's dying now too. I'm falling apart here, guys, because I am talking too much. But Erica, like, she finished 4th at trials last year and threw a really big PB. And now she's just elevated so much this year. And 4 throws over 60 or 4 competitions over 65. The only other American who's had that kind of consistency at that level is Val Allman. So that's about as good of an endorsement as you could possibly get heading into USA's. And she's got the standard. Her PB's, I think, 66.6. She's shown she can compete well at this level, like she did last year at trials. So I'm very curious to see what Erica Beistel will be able to do, because it's easy for anyone to, like, kind of get lost in this field. Just like Gabby Jacobs is 6th in U.S. history with her 68.21. But she's 5th in the U.S. just this year. So that tells you about all you need to know about how good American discus throwing has been this year. Also, I'm looking down at my laptop now, and I once again forgot to talk about someone very important, and that is Sierra Jackson. And I just am disrespecting NCAA champions today. Sierra, obviously, I'm gonna if we're talking about boom or bust people, I'm gonna talk about Rachel Richardson in a little bit. But Sierra she threw 65.82 to win NCAAs, had 4 fouls in that series. She threw 67.82 to finish 2nd at pre, just behind Val. She had 5 fouls in that series. So, knowing what can happen at USA's to people with foul issues, or even to people who don't typically have foul issues, like we saw for Brooke last year, that concerns me. That being said, especially because the situation at pre was she fouled her first 3 throws and only got 3 more throws because I think the field was 8 women exactly. So that won't happen at USA's if you cage your first 3 throws or whatever she did. So that does concern me. That does scare me a little bit, in terms of what Sierra will be able to do. But, like, yeah, she has foul issues, but also at the 2 biggest meets of her life so far, she's brought it. At the 2 biggest meets of her season, even with those foul issues, she's managed to throw huge PBs. So, it's like I talked about with what is that? That was so long ago. I think I was talking about men's shot when I was talking about how it just takes one. Like, nobody exemplifies it just takes one more than Sierra Jackson. If she can find that one in Eugene this week, she's gonna mix up a whole lot of stuff and ruin a couple people's days, I think. So, yeah, women's disc, that's gonna be a battle. It's like, if you think about the spots, like, truly up for contention in men's shot, maybe it's 2, because maybe you say there's not going to be 3 guys that beat Joe. In women's shot, really, it feels like it's 1, because it feels like Jada and Maggie are locks. In men's disc, I think it's 2, because there's not 3 guys that are beating Sam Mattis. In women's disc, it's 2 because there's not 3 women that are beating Val Allman. There's not anyone that's beating Val Allman. Let's be serious with ourselves. For men's hammer, what a segue there. There's also 2 spots up for grabs because nobody is beating Rudy MF Winkler. This guy, the tear he's been on this year, so crazy. He's had the 6 best competitions by any American this year. He's thrown 80 meters more often than he hasn't this year. He has the American record. He has the world lead. He is Rudy Winkler. He is inevitable. He's going to win another national title this weekend. Moving on. Rudy, you deserve more love than that. But like I said, my phone and my laptop are dying, so I need to talk about people whose spots are more up in the air. Like Daniel Ha. For Daniel, him and Rudy have been 1-2 each of the last 4 years, going back to 2021. It's weird that may not be the case this year, but that's just the fact of the matter is that Daniel Ha has had a weird season. But like it hasn't been super consistent. But when you look at his 2 most important competitions of the year, pre and you could argue for men's hammer, maybe the LA Throws Cup, which he didn't throw that well at, was better than the USATF Throws Festival. But if you look at the Throws Festival and pre, those are his 2 best competitions of the year. He went 78-55 at pre, 77-60 in Tucson. So maybe that's the sign you need to say he still can bring it, and he does it when he has to. It's just the lesser competitions, like he threw really poorly in Ramona, but I think that might have been his season opener. And then there's been a couple other competitions this year that have just kind of been head scratchers for Daniel in reference to what he's usually capable of. But when you look at a situation where he just has to finish top 3 at USA's, like I really like his chances to do that. It's just less of a safe bet than it has been for him in years past, which is kind of a weird thing to reckon with. But it coincides with not just him having a little bit of a down year by his standards, a little bit of an inconsistent year, but it's also the guys behind him getting a lot better. Because last year, we only sent 2 guys to Paris, where it was Rudy Winkler and Daniel Ha. And then there were a bunch of really good guys at trials, like a bunch of guys PB'd, but none of them were qualified. This year, that's not the case because we have Rudy, Daniel, Tyler Williams, Trey Knight, Tanner Berg, Justin Stafford, Tara Robinson O'Hagan, and Alex Young. They are all qualified. So no matter what, we will be sending 3 men to Tokyo, which is the way it should be. Let's keep that in the back of our mind for when we get to javelin. But yeah, so regardless of what happens, we're sending 3 guys to Tokyo. And if you say Rudy and Daniel are number 1, just like we saw the battle for bronze at trials last year, the battle for that 3rd spot is going to be insane. Trey Knight through 78-15 in Portland, like fouled out of regionals, didn't make it to NCAAs. 3 days after the NCAA championships, he throws in Portland, throws a PB of 78-15 that would have won NCAAs, would have beat Costa Saltos. A lot of water breaks today, but that's what happens when you're recording for 69 minutes already. For Trey, like that's as good of revenge as you could get, I think. And then he threw really well in Ironwood, threw decent in LA. He's got really good momentum coming into USA's, which is good to see because it would have been really easy to just like get down with yourself and kind of punt on the season after your collegiate career ended that way. But seeing the resiliency that Trey's had this year and just refusing to let that happen, that's been really fun to see. Tyler Williams is ahead of Trey, only behind Rudy and Daniel on the US list this year. He threw 78.30 at a meet in May in Pennsylvania. And it's a huge outlier performance for him where it's 3 meters better than any other competition he's had this year. And so maybe that makes you raise your eyebrow a little bit, but then put that eyebrow back down because last year at trials, he finished 4th and threw like a 1.5 meter PB at trials last year. So, I mean, there were a lot of guys that threw like a meter plus PB at trials last year. So if they bring that energy again and Tyler can capture that energy, it obviously is going to be harder to PB by over a meter now. But like if he can be around that range of like if he's throwing 78, I don't think there's going to be 3 other guys that also throw 78 to beat him. So if he can get back in that range, in his PB range, he should have a really solid chance at making this team. Tarek is, I mentioned he's not throwing the shot. Speculated a little bit as to that, which probably is not true and it's not that deep. But with him going all in on the hammer, that fascinates me. I would have liked to see a little bit more out of him at pre, which feels greedy to ask. Like, he had his 3rd ever meet over 75 meters at pre, and I'm like, should have been better. But Tarek, he I take a shot every time I say elevate, and you will be dead by the end of this preview. He elevated at NCAAs and threw a big PB there. Last year at trials, he PB'd in the qualifying round, and then in the final, he PB'd again for almost 1.5 meter improvement across the full week. And, he's coming into this one 76, 78 at NCAAs. He just shows up when he needs to. And it's such an impressive thing to do, especially for a guy who's still really young, to do it not just at the NCAA level, but last year we saw on the national stage against the best in the US and some of the best in the world. He still found a way to level up like that. And I'm so excited to see just what this competition is able to bring out of Tarek. And obviously I would have loved to see him in shot, but the fact that he is solely throwing hammer and seems to be so locked in on that, like, that just has me salivating about what he thinks he's going to be capable of this weekend. So yeah, I can't wait to see that. Justin Stafford, my guy, big J Staff for the real ones. Last year he was the guy that finished 3rd at trials, but just didn't have the ranking points or the standard to actually make it to Paris. He doesn't need to worry about that this year because he's qualified. And like on paper, this year hasn't been super crazy for him. Or just like at a first glance, I should say, because the 3 best throws of his career are all from last year. But when you look at those 3 throws, he threw a PB at Ironwood like 2 weeks before trials, and then he PB'd in the qualifying round of trials, and then he threw a 77.07 PB, which is his PB currently, in the finals of trials to finish 3rd. But he's raised his floor so much this year, which is something you hear throwers talk about a lot. I've heard in the past 3 weeks. I talked to Rudy Winkler about it. I also heard Sarah Mitten talking about it. And he's raising his floor a ton because he's competed 8 times this year, and it's the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th best marks of his career. So his baseline is so much better than it was last year, leading into this big peak where he PB'd by so much. And so he can compete well. He's gotten better every single year at USA's finish-wise. And so it's just going to be fascinating to see where he's able to end up this year. So I'm really excited to see what Justin's going to be able to do. And also take a shot every time. If you take a shot every time I say the word elevate or excited, I'm sorry. Please don't send me your hospital bill. I'll try and pull out a thesaurus for the next video and use some different words. Do I have anything else to talk about in the men's hammer? Alex Young has been throwing really well this year, thrown over 76. Like I said, he is qualified. So he could be in the mix there with a good day, as well as Jordan Geist. But I'm running out of time to talk about anyone else. So we'll move on to women's hammer, which it feels like sacrilege to have women's hammer come up 75 minutes into this preview, because it's probably going to be the best event potentially of the entire meet. Because for the 8 best in history, 2 world champions, a world silver and bronze medalist, an Olympic silver medalist, and Rachel Richardson, who doesn't have any international accolades, but she's the 6th best woman ever. Very big news. I've been lying to you guys all year. I completely forgot that World Athletics gives a bye for hammer for the top performer on the Continental Tour from the year before. I don't know how they quantify that necessarily, but somehow in 2024, Brooke Andersen was the top performer on the Continental Tour, which is huge because that means the U.S. does have 4 spots, which is really good because it would be terrible for the sport if we had to leave 2 of Brooke Andersen, Deanna Price, Rachel Richardson, Janae Castonavoid, and Annette Chickenwoke. If we had to leave 2 of them home, that'd be terrible. We only have to leave 1 of them home, which is still terrible, but whatever. So, Brooke, your spot is safe. Congratulations. Enjoy Tokyo. She's been the best hammer thrower in the U.S. this year. Hasn't lost to an American all year. But seeing what happened to Budapest, what happened at trials last year, I'm very glad she's going to be coming into this one with no pressure, and it's kind of easing her back into a championship meet where if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. She's still going to Tokyo. She gets it out of her system, and she'll be theoretically back full force for that one. I'm excited for that for Brooke. When you look at everyone else who's going to be fighting for those 3 spots, like I said, it's going to be Deanna Price, the 2019 world champion, who's thrown 78.51 this year. The only American she's lost to is Brooke Andersen. You've got Rachel Richardson, who's thrown 78.80 this year. She's also thrown 77.81, 76.50 something. Just a crazy breakout for her. 4 meters better than her PB last year. She's put together as many big marks as anyone else in the world, but she's also no marked in 3 competitions, had foul issues in basically every other competition. So it's the same thing I talked about with Sierra, where seeing the track record of people with foul issues at USAs, like Loggy last year, what we saw with Brooke last year, it has me skeptical. But then again, all she needs is 1. So it's the conflicting philosophies of all you need is 1 good throw, and also foul issues can doom you. We'll see which one ends up playing out. Or maybe the foul issues will just go away, and Rachel will put together a really good series and earn her first national team kit, which would be awesome to see. We'll see how that plays out. Other 2 women fighting for that spot, Janae Castonavoid, who opened with an absolute banger in Tucson, throwing 76.42, I believe it was. But then the rest of her season has been really good, like 74s consistently, 73 highs, but not necessarily her standard. Like her 76 is the only mark from this year of hers that's inside her top 10 best marks of her career, which obviously is a hard list to crack at this point when she's 30 years old and one of the best in world history. But maybe in an ideal world, you would have liked to see more out of her. But a very important marker for her is that she beat both Rachel Richardson and Annette Chickenwoke at pre, which is the biggest hammer competition of the year so far. So that's good to see. moving on to Annette now. It's crazy. I mentioned it, I think, 2 weeks ago. It's absolutely insane saying the reigning Olympic silver medalist needs to PB to make the US national team. But that's just the state of women's hammer throwing in the United States right now. And Annette, like, obviously she brought it last year at USA's when other people were faltering, and then she brought it in the Olympic final when other people were faltering. And she's in a much better spot this year than she was coming into USA's last year. Last year at USA's, she throws a huge season best in the final to win trials. But her marks this year are way better than they were last year. Like, she's thrown 75.47 this year, which is the third best mark of her career, only 2 centimeters off her PB. She's thrown 74 mid, which is further than she had thrown entering trials last year. So, like, she's putting together a better season than she had last year. It's just, I mean, it's tough to say other people have been doing that too, because realistically, like, Rachel has, but like Brooke and Janae, who she finished, and Deanna, who she all finished ahead of at trials last year, like, they're just as good as they always are. Maybe Janae's a little bit behind where she typically is, but Brooke and Deanna are just right there. And it's just, I mean, maybe some craziness happens again, but assuming that weird, like, bizarro dimension where Brooke and Janae finish, like, where Brooke fouls out and Janae finishes, like, 9th or whatever, barring that happening again, it probably will take a PB for Annette to make the national team, which is a crazy thing to think about, but it's also really, really exciting. I really don't have time, which is unfortunate because it's poor planning on my part that I don't have time to talk about some dark horses, but I wanna give shout outs to Erin Reese, who, made the Olympic team last year, threw 72.98, which is the second best mark of her career this year, and she's almost certainly not going to make the team this year. You guys, I'm having an absolute disaster of a time right now. First, my phone hit 2% and it stopped recording, so I've apologized for the cut. And then I took a break, let my phone charge a little bit, came back out here, started recording, spent 20 minutes talking about men's and women's javelin, wrapping it up a little bit about women's hammer. And then I realized I was muted the whole time. And now the temperature, when I started recording, this morning, it was 65 degrees outside. Now it's like 80. So I had to take my jacket off. And now I'm mad. And this is the things I do for you guys. So please like this video. It would really help my sanity out. Right now, I believe the last thing I was talking about in my last recording was finishing up the women's hammer and talking about Erin Reese, who is an Olympian that's had a really good year this year, throwing 62.98, which is the second best throw of her career, better than any mark she had last year, including at trials or at the Olympics. And it's basically a 0% chance she makes the team for Tokyo, which is crazy. That's just the insane depth of the U.S. women's hammer. We've got a lot more really good women, like Shelby Frank. You got Jelani Davis, who's transitioned to the professional life really well and has been throwing excellent this year. You got Jillian Shippey, who's been having a solid season, but just none of them can quite match. Like, it's not their fault that they can't match 5 of the best women in history. It's just unfortunate timing on their part. So that's kind of the situation we're in. And then looking at, because men's and women's jav are different situations with the qualifying status. But if you look at the 6 events we've covered now, and you look at, like, people who are fighting for spots, you've got essentially men's shot, assuming Joe is a lock, you've got 3 guys fighting for 2 spots. Women's shot, assuming Maggie and Jada are locks, you've got like 5 or 6 women fighting for 1 spot. Men's disc, assuming Sam is a lock, you've got like 6 guys fighting for 2 spots. Women's disc, assuming Val is a lock, you've got like 4 or 5 women fighting for 2 spots. Men's hammer, assuming Rudy is a lock, I don't think you can necessarily call Daniel Ha a lock this year. Assuming Rudy's a lock, you've got like 5 or 6 guys fighting for 2 spots. And then women's hammer, Brooke has the bye, but nobody else is a lock. So then you've got 4 women fighting for 3 spots. It's the beauty and the pain of US champs where you're leaving really, really excellent athletes at home. It's essentially like the best in the world are it makes for really good competitions. It's also a little heartbreaking because you see these people that it's like, man, if you were anything other than American, you'd be at the world championships. That's kind of unfortunate, but also from a fan's perspective and from a journalist / analyst / whatever you want to call me perspective, it gives me some really fun stuff to talk about. So I'll take that. Moving on to men's javelin now. And javelin, like I said, it's a different situation because in both men's and women's jav, we only have 2 athletes qualified this year. And last year, we only sent 1 athlete to Paris in each men's and women's jav. For the men, it was Curtis Thompson last year. This year, the men that are qualified is Curtis Thompson and Mark Minicello. And they're not only the 2 American men that are qualified, they're both also clearly the 2 best American men this year. Because there's been 11 performances where American men have broken 80 meters this year. Donovan Banks has 1 of them, and then Mark Minicello and Curtis Thompson have 5 apiece. For Curtis, he opened his season throwing 87.76 at the Texas Relays. Big PB for him, secures the world standard, gets his ticket to Tokyo, cleaned up, out of the way, nice, done and dusted. Since then, he's competed, I think, 6 times and hasn't broken 82. So the biggest thing that I want to see out of Curtis this week is a return to, he doesn't have to PB, he doesn't have to throw 87 meters, but I just want to see him be better. Because he's at a point in his career where he's made 4 straight national teams, but only 1 of those years has he actually made it to the final. And so there comes a point where making a national team is nice, but you want to be competing on the global stage. And he has it in him to compete there. He's thrown 87 meters twice. Like, that's good enough to make a final. That's good enough to probably place at least in the top 6 or top 5 most years, if not medal. But he just hasn't been able to replicate that when he gets to these global stages. And obviously this isn't a perfect representation of a global stage because there's not really any pressure on him with his spot to Tokyo essentially locked up already. But it's certainly a bigger stage than, say, Texas Relays in late March or throwing at the Ramona World Invitational in a 4-man field or whatever. So that's the thing, is I just want to see Curtis be better this week. And for me, like, if he throws like 84 or even like 85 might be a little expensive given the form we've seen him in the last couple months. But if we see him throw 84, I'll be very happy with that. And it'll be a nice boost of confidence in Curtis for me moving into the rest of the season. For Mark, his transition to post-collegiate competition has gone as good as you possibly could have hoped. He threw 82 meters, 3 out of his first 4 meets this year. The last 2 haven't been super exceptional, but he's a really good competitor at USA's. He finished 3rd at USA's in 2023 and 2022. He was 4th at the Olympic trials in 2021. But also it's getting to a point where, he hasn't made a national team yet. This is going to be his first one. I believe last year he was in the quota, but then didn't perform that well at trials, finished like 7th maybe, and some other people moved up and bumped him out of the quota. That's not going to happen this year. He's very comfortably inside there. He's got a spot in Tokyo, barring like an act of God. And so I really like that from Mark. I mean, he's also someone I've interviewed multiple times, so my bias might be showing through again. But I'm excited to see Mark finally get his first national team kit. And, maybe, especially going off of how good Paris was last year, maybe like making the final would be a bit of a lofty goal for him. But I think there's no reason he can't compete really well when he gets to Tokyo. And so I think would be a solid showing here would be a good step forward for that. Like if you can throw like 81 or something, I'd be quite pleased with that. Donovan Banks is the next closest American to being in the quota, and he could move in with a near PB performance, which would be about 82, like 82 high. And he threw 81.70 to open this year, I think is the mark. But he hasn't really looked quite like that in recent showings. So a situation like that might be a little bit too much to ask of him, but he certainly should be able to get another top 3 finish at USA's, which I believe he was 3rd at trials last year. But a guy, if you're looking at USA's in a vacuum, just as the USA National Championships and not as the USA World Championship qualifying event, don't sleep on Jordan Davis necessarily. He tore it up last year at Southern Connecticut State, I believe, just completely rewriting the D2 record books. Came into USA's, didn't have his best day at trials last year, but he's a dog. I'm not sure what's been going on this year. He's only competed twice. He's now transferring to Georgia, which he's already like 25, so I don't know how he has any eligibility left. But because he's only competed twice and he doesn't have the standard, he's not in the world rankings quota, and it'd be really hard, I think, for him to get there, especially considering his 2 competitions this year haven't been super great. I think he hasn't broken 75 yet. So maybe it's a bit rich to say, like, really, like, look out for him, I guess. But if we're talking ceilings, the only man in the field with a better PB than him is Curtis Thompson. So if he can find a way to capture some of that magic again that he had last year, he could be a threat to podium. But like I said, Tokyo qualification is probably going to be out of his reach. Moving to women's jav now, it's kind of a weird year because Kara Winger is officially retired now. I think. You never know with Kara, but all signs are pointing towards her being really retired now. And then Maggie Malone Harden has only competed once this year and is not on the entry list. So it's kind of a strange situation. It's the first time since 2007 that neither one of them have been at USA's or the Olympic trials in years that's applicable. But the young guns are supplementing them well. Maybe a couple years out from like real contention, but there's a really good young crop of US throwers right now. And kind of leading that charge is the only 2 Americans who are qualified for Tokyo right now, and that's Madison Wiltrout and Maddie Harris. Mattis' son is pretty well within the quota. Maddie is currently 35th out of 36th, so she'll need a solid performance and then maybe something in the chasing window to really kind of solidify her place on the team for Tokyo. But they've been the 2 best throwers all year, barring perhaps a surprise introduction about 4 days ago that we'll get to in a little bit. But they've both been really good all season. They've both been over 58, I think 3 times each. Madison's thrown over 60. Maddie, I think, has thrown 59 mid. And I'm super excited to see what that battle is going to look like because I think Madison was 3rd at Olympic trials last year and then 3rd at USA's the year before, which Maddie actually won, beating Maggie Malone Harden at USA's in 2023. So they both got experience at this level. They've both been having really strong seasons. They've both got PBs well over 60 meters. And yeah, I'm very intrigued to see how that kind of battle for the top 2 is going to shake out, especially because essentially with the Tokyo qualification kind of locked up for them, a little bit more questionable for Maddie just given how close she is to that cutoff. Really, there's not really like qualification pressure on them. It's kind of just they're going out there and duking it out for the national title, which is going to be fun and kind of a different flavor from some of the other competitions you see where the competition in some extent matters more than just purely, I got to be top 3. or whatever. I don't know if that makes sense. But there's a chance neither one of them comes out on top this weekend because or I guess not this weekend. There's competitions Thursday. Because let's talk about Evelyn Bliss now, the sophomore from Bucknell. She had a good NCAA season, put out some really solid marks, and she was good last year. Like, she finished 5th at trials, was the U.S. junior champion, finished 3rd at World Juniors. But then a couple days ago at the World University Games in Germany, she went nuclear, 60-81 in the qualifying round, which moves her up to 10th on the U.S. all-time list. It's the best throw by an American this year. And, it's kind of a flash in the pan moment where that mark is over 3.5 meters better than any other throw of her career. But she backed it up with a throw at 57-37, I think, in the finals to finish 2nd, which was also ahead of where her PB was coming into that meet. So she's coming in full steam ahead, ready to compete. And last year as a 19-year-old, she competed really well on this national stage. And maybe that the improvement, we see from her age 19 to age 20 season, you kind of expect that with younger throwers at this age, but it's just such a monumental breakthrough that it's really, really exciting and really curious to watch, especially having a 20-year-old American throwing almost 61 meters. Who knows what she's going to look like in 5 years, 7 years, 9 years. By the time she's 30, how good could she be? It's a very exciting thing to think about. For the purposes of qualifying to Tokyo, Evelyn is in kind of a rough spot right now because she's pretty far outside the quota, but she is someone who could really be benefited by the chasing window. If you look at what she would need out of USAs to move into the quota, I believe, she'd either need to throw 56 mid and win for the combination of result and placing points. 56 mid and win, 57 mid and finish 2nd, or 58 low and finish 3rd, which 56 mid and winning is not going to happen because Maddie and Madison have just been too good this year to let that happen. 57 mid and finishing 2nd is probably also not going to happen. And then 58 low finishing 3rd. I think that would be the most likely option because I feel like with the way Maddie and Madison have been throwing this year, they're probably both going to go 59 plus, maybe 60 plus. Maybe we get lucky and see that. But the good thing for Evelyn, though, is she doesn't need to get all of it at USAs. Right now in her 5 performances that are qualifying her in the world rankings quota, she has a couple of 54-meter throws in there or something. So if she finishes top 3 at USAs, gets good points from that, and then just gets in 1 or 2 meets over the next 3 weeks to bump up that rankings a little bit, she could very well find herself on a plane to Tokyo in September, which that would be exciting to see. Especially just with how insane the breakout has been, and World Junior bronze medalist last year going to Senior Worlds would be very cool. The collegiate women have been dominating the U.S. scene this year in the javelin, where obviously you have Maddie and Evelyn, who are 1 and 3 on the U.S. list this year. But then you got a couple more women that are also inside the top 7 in Utah State's Kelsey Oldroyd, who's been throwing superbly the last month and a half of her collegiate season. And then UNC's Kate Joyce and Princeton's Shay Green. You've also got Ariana Ince in the mix, who this is her 13th consecutive U.S. championship/Olympic trials. This year has been a step back for her. She hasn't broken 56 yet, but if experience is something you count on, she basically has more experience at this meet than her next 7 competitors combined. And she's also among the American women not named Maddie Harris or Madison Wiltrout. She is the closest to being in the quota. So a good performance here, and then maybe one more before the window closes on August 24th. She might have the best chance of moving up into the quota if she can kind of start to turn her season around here, which is to be seen. And with that, we're done with USA's. This is, I mean, with the break and the 19-minute recording I had that was worthless because I was muted, this is like a 2.5-hour process, not counting all of the research that I also did for writing this preview. So this USA's is exhausting, and I'm not even in Eugene yet. To quote David Melly, I'm exhausted and I haven't even gotten on the plane yet, except Audrey and I are driving 9 hours tomorrow morning. But you know, this is what we live for. USA's is the kind of meet that you just love to see. And I'm so unbelievably excited to get up to Eugene and watch the best throwers in the country do what they do best. We got spots to Tokyo on the line. We got national titles. We've got glory. We've got really big marks. It's going to be so much fun. The first 2 days are going to be on usatf.tv/Joymo. Portions of the days 3 and 4 are also going to be on usatf.tv/Joymo. And I assume they might be having like field event specific streams, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. The NBC/Peacock broadcast window is just Saturday and Sunday for 2 hours from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time, I believe. Doubt they'll squeeze any field events in there, but we'll see. But if you want to stay tuned with the field events, follow P. Hoff Mahoney on Twitter, Paulie Throws on Instagram for interviews, live updates, all that good stuff. And then tune into the CITIUS MAG post-meet shows every day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, on the CITIUS MAG YouTube channel, the Twitter profile. We'll be everywhere. And I'm going to make sure that Chris Chavez talks about the throws, or else that's it. There is nowhere else. CITIUS MAG will cover the throws in great detail every night, which I'm very excited about. It's going to be a lot of fun. USA's is here, baby. Let's get ready for let's figure out who we're sending to Worlds. I'm starting to talk in nonsense because I've been doing this for so long. It's really hot outside. My throat is dry. It's lunchtime now. Yeah, hopefully I'll get this video up on Tuesday, or else I'm genuinely going to crash out. But I hope you enjoyed this USA Throws preview. Chris Chavez and Mac Fleet did a full track events preview that's 3 hours long on the CITIUS MAG podcast feed if you want to listen to that. For some reason. No, I'm kidding. It's great. And yeah, stay tuned to everything CITIUS MAG with New Balance for the next couple weeks. Or the next couple days, USA, because we got a big squad, as Chris Chavez would say, rolling into Eugene. And it's going to be a good one. And I'm excited to be a part of that squad. All right. That's enough out of me. This is coming up on, I think we're over the 100-minute barrier now. So that's fun. I've been Paulie Throws. Like I said, Paulie Throws on Instagram, P. Hoff Mahoney on Twitter. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Please comment and let me know your guys' takes for USA's. Comment on YouTube or on Spotify. And follow the podcast on Spotify. Stay tuned for CITIUS MAG stuff all week. I will see you guys next time.